Okay, so picking up from the previous pyrokinesis video, in that one we looked at clicking on objects, namely we use these barrels, to make them detonate. In this one we don't want something that detonates so much as melts. So the only thing I've done in between videos is I moved the barrels out of the scene, and I imported from an external folder these images, metal 01 through metal 24. Basically it's meant to look like a metal door melting. So I don't want to call it a cheat because this is how you do 2D animation, and that is you draw it externally. So part of the effect is created through coding, but part of it is just through good old cell-based animation. So what we're going to do is we need to create our object that we want to melt. So we're going to go to Game Object and we're going to click on Create Empty, and let's call it Metal Door. Now what we're going to do is we need to add two objects to it, an animation and an animator. So if you don't have this tab here, all you have to do is right click and choose Add Tab and choose Animation. And this is an improvement in 5. Not sure when they started it, but it definitely in the 5X. Because in the 4X, it was possible to click on an object, create an animation, and get attached to the wrong object. They seem to have resolved that now. So with the metal door object highlighted, click on Animation, and see how it gives you this message is very explicitly saying where you're going to be creating the animation? It didn't do that before, and so sometimes it attached it to the wrong object. So go ahead and click on Create, and you just have to name it. We'll call it Melting, and we'll save it. Now you just drag and drop the images. I just clicked on the first, held Shift, click on the last, just drop them right in there. Sample is the frame rate. We'll drop it to 18 frames per second. And then we will just see how that looks. So it's going to be right here. So that'll suffice. That's a good melt animation. We don't want it to melt too quickly. Now, a few things. We don't want it to melt right away. And also, since we're melting it, we probably should have steam to build up the effect of it being heated up. So the second thing we're going to do is we're going to create another particle system. So click on Game Object and click on Particle System. And what we're going to do this kind of quickly. I'm not going to explain every little detail, but at least you can see what the settings are going to be when we're done. So broad strokes, what we're doing is we're giving it a gray color, and we're having the size start at less than full size and increase in size. The notion of that it's becoming like this cloud and dissipating. Don't want to get too hooked up on this. Yes, it looks okay. No, both of these are going to be moved lower. Just going to tweak the particle system a little bit more, and then we'll be done. Not looking to make it look perfect, just to give you the basic idea of what we're trying to do. There we go. So that's more like a cloud. Okay, so now that we've got our two animations, one is a old school cell animation, the other one is the particle system. So we need to coordinate the particle system with the melting. So we want it to stop. We want it to stop on time, and so that is done by using the duration. So in other words, when this is done melting, we really want the steam to stop. So let's take a look how this looks. Okay, so it definitely lasted too long because the door started a second sequence. Okay, that's good enough. We can always tweak it later. Alright, so we've created our melting door. We've created our steam. We already have the fire glow. We're not going to use the burst for this because the burst was when the object exploded. Well, in this case, the object's not exploding. It's instead melting and it's giving off steam. So we do want the glow because that's supposed to be the heat being applied. So we'll take that metal door, and now we don't want it to melt as soon as it starts. It needs to be paused. So that's the first thing we need to do. So first of all, we need to designate a default image for when the animation is paused. So go ahead and take that first frame and just drag and drop it onto the sprite renderer. Or should I say the sprite attribute of the sprite renderer. Go ahead and move that to wherever you want it to be. Now this is going to be clickable. Just like the barrels, you're going to click on this to use the pyrokinesis. So go ahead and add component, physics 2D, box collider. Now if you notice how big the box collider is, because that's actually the perimeter of the image, it's just you have a lot of background space. And it's important to differentiate between the image that you can see in the clickable area. This would all be clickable if we don't shrink this. So let's go ahead and shrink this. I mean, you can make it a little bit forgiving, but obviously if it's ridiculously so, players are going to feel like the training wheels are on. Or they're just going to think it's buggy or whatever. But you get the point that it's important to differentiate between the image, the foreground image, and what is actually clickable. Let's go ahead and make that a trigger. And, okay, so now it's clickable. Now we have to tell Unity what to do when it gets clicked. So create C#, and just as the other one was like, another one was called Firestarter, so we'll call this melt door as opposed to metal door. So we'll click on our metal door, we'll put melt door onto it, we'll double click to open that up. Okay, so first thing is we need this to not play when it's instantiated. So, which is at the beginning of the when the scene starts to run. So, get component. What component? The animator. What attribute? Whether or not it is enabled, and it will be set to false. Now outside of start, outside of update, you need to add a new routine, and this is a predefined one. On, mouse, down, capital O, M, D will not work if you do not do that. It's case sensitive. So on the on, mouse, down, so when you click on the object that the script is attached to, which is the metal door, we want the animation to run. Now that in itself is a bit of a problem because that means it's going to run and keep cycling. So we will address that. Now the other thing is that when you click on it, we want two particle systems to be instantiated. A, we want the glow to be instantiated on top of this because it's being melted. 2, we want the steam to appear above it. So let's take a look how to do that. So first, we need to make metal door aware of those two particle systems. So I think I made an edit. I changed the particle system name to steam. That's all I did, is I just changed the name. So sorry if that's only changed. So that's just the particle steam system. So go ahead, take that and drag and drop that into the asset area and then delete it from the scene because we want it to be instantiated and not just to be there on the onset. So now we need to make metal door aware of those two objects. So public transform glow obj public transform steam obj. Save it. Now when we click on the metal door, it's now got two variables. So steam should go to steam obj, glow should go to glow obj. So now we just need to instantiate them. So instantiate, let's start with the glow because that's easier of the two. So if you've never seen instantiate, you have to give 3 arguments. The first is what is being instantiated. Well, the glow object is being instantiated. So what is being instantiated? Where it's being instantiated, we will use the location or the position of the object that this is attached to, the script is attached to. So you just do transform dot position. Okay, so transform dot position is the position of the object the script is attached to. The script is attached to the metal door. You want the glow object to be instantiated on top of the metal door. And the next thing that we want is the third argument is the rotation. And that is usually you're going to want the rotation of the object that's being instantiated. Maybe not, typically that's what I find. So glow object dot rotation. So those are the 3 arguments. What is being instantiated, where is being instantiated, and what's its rotation. Now the second one's a little bit more complicated because where we want it to be instantiated is a little bit more complicated. So this is the steam object, but we don't want it instantiated on top of the door. That wouldn't quite look right. We really want it to be instantiated above it. I mean, I suppose you could make an argument either way, but since we're not really dealing with a 3D environment, then you really kind of want the steam to appear above it. So what you have to do is you can't just do transform, you have to break it down into its 2 components because it's a vector 2. It's x and y, horizontal and vertical. So we're going to use that same terminology, transform.position.x. So that's fine. It's okay to be at the horizontal location of the door. But the y position, we really want it to be above. So we'll do just +1 for now. And then the third argument is steam.rotation. So it looks kind of complicated, but all you've really done is you've taken this and you've broken it into its 2 components, the x and then the y. So we're instantiating the glow on top of the door, we're instantiating the steam just above the door, and we are running the animation when we click on it. Now, let's see what we can do. I suppose, since we know how long the animation runs, we could just do a destroy and then we don't have to worry about it running over and over again. So destroy game object, and I believe we put it at 18 frames per second. You can just click on it and go to animation. So it's 18 frames per second and there were 24 frames, so that should be 1 1/3 seconds. So destroy game object. There's two ways you can use destroy. Well, at least two that I'm going to mention right now. There's destroy game object, which immediately destroys it, or you can add a timer. And we said we want it to be about 1 1/3, so let's do 1.25. And then you drop an F in there because you're using a decimal. So destroy this object, but wait 1.25 seconds before you do. Now, one of the ways that you can get around this is in this animation, this last frame where it's really just a puddle, you could actually add this on a couple more times so it actually sits there for a little bit. So you can like just, as you can see, you can just drag and drop it so the animation is not set in stone. Okay. That way you don't have to worry about getting the timing exactly right. So let's bump that up to 135 now. So when we click on the door, the glow instantiates, the steam instantiates, it plays this. Sorry, that was supposed to be true. I copied and pasted it and didn't fix it. It plays the animation and it destroys it 1 1/3 seconds later. We are almost done, actually. There's a few things that have to be done as far as housekeeping, like you want this actually already has the self-destroy in it, I believe. The steam doesn't. So let's go ahead and run it. And click. Very nice. So, couple issues. The glow really, it melts a little bit too fast before the glow has a chance to build up. So we can actually play that just slightly slower. Just go back to animation and say drop that to 16 frames per second. There you go. Now in this case, the glow looks a little bit light. The reason for that is because the other ones were a darker color and they really filled up the background. But you would have a background art here anyway, so that's just about it. So we can have this wait a little bit longer. Let the puddle sit there a bit. Okay. So that should just about do it. Like I said, could do a little bit of housekeeping, like let's take the steam, because I'll run it one more time. Watch over here. See how the steam's still there? So even though it's not generating anything, it's really kind of bad memory management to just leave that there if you're not going to use it again. So if we click on the steam prefab, we can just drag and drop the self-destroy script from the other lesson in this series, and let's look at self-destroy. Basically, it looks at the name of the object and then says destroyed after a certain amount of time. So we'll just take one, copy. So we said it was steam clone, and have it stop after like 1.5 F. Oh, typo. So you just have to be mindful of how how long everything lasts. The steam and the fire and the melting really should coordinate. But I've shown you a few ways that you can do that, as far as how many frames you use, as far as the frame rate. But you get the idea. So that's basically it. That object is now destroyed. You can see it's not here anymore. Let's do one more thing. Let's take the barrel. That still works, and that still works. So what you've done is you've created the same skill, but you've created two different scripts for it. One script for when it's on a barrel, and one script for when it's on a door, or something that can melt. So something that's meant to be detonated and something that's meant to be melted. So that should do it. If you have any questions or want to see any more of this series, just let me know.